Welcome to today's panel on innovative teaching ideas. I'm Tina Cruz from the Center for Teaching Excellence, and we have a panel from the College of Education. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I want to remind you at the end, please fill out your evaluations, whether you're here on site or whether you're watching online. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Mitchell Yell from the Program in Special Education.
I'm Kayla Edens, and I'm from the Department of Educational Psychology and Research program.
I'm Gina Rathel. I'm from the Program for Special Education.
I'm Susan Quinn. I'm from our Office of Instructional Support.
And I'm Cheryl Wisick, and I'm in Special Education and in Educational Technology.
Cheryl, you want to start?
Oh, I'm starting. Let me come over here.
Okay.
And for this presentation, what we've done is we set up a wiki space. And I have to get my glasses on. Do we have the?
Do you want to switch to the computer?
Yeah, we're going to switch to the computer. And this Wikispace site, Innovative Classroom Ideas.wikispaces.com, and it has all the links that we'll talk about today, as well as many, many more. So please visit this so that you can get all these links. And this link will be linked to the Center for Teaching Excellence. So I'm going to talk, just really quickly mention some training materials that are available. And these have been organized by kind of resources for general training, resources to assist students, and just some general resources that I found for ebooks and e-text. So the first one is CiteEd, and it is basically a center for implementing technology in education. And what's really nice about this site is that they have lots of free webinars that you can go to. But what's even better about the free webinars is that they archive everything online, so that if you can't make the webinar, you can go download all those materials later. So they have lots of things about differentiated instruction. They also have a really nice matrix about how do we integrate technology into instruction. Another resource that we use in special ed, but I think is a really general resource, it's a nice training center. It's called the IRIS Resource Locator, and basically you can look at, they have all materials, they have modules, they have case studies, they have activities, and they have info briefs on all of these different topics, whether, and mainly it's education, but there's still a lot of good resources in, you know, how do we teach and how do we use these resources. Another one, if we're looking at how do we integrate technology as the whole idea of universal design for learning, and CAST is kind of the big site for that, and there's a number of institutes in professional development, and they've developed a number of products. So all of those resources are available. One of the resources that I wanted to mention is that they have a site called Strategy Tutor. Now I know, so all of you have students who come into your classes and they can conduct research from the internet perfectly, right? Even though they're college students. You know, and I thought that they developed this site mainly for, you know, probably kids in high school, but I bet from what I've heard from people, there's probably students who come in and need this. And what it does is it actually takes students through how do you do a project? You know, how do you do your project? How do you set your goals, begin your search, and do all the steps on searching? So for some of our students who need that additional help, it's probably a really nice resource. I'm on that site. And one last one I want to mention is Got It. And this was actually a new site I just found. It was developed by someone who actually is, he sent me an email, and he's dyslexic, and it is an add-on for Word for students, for anyone who feels that just the regular spell check doesn't help, and it's additional spell check. And again, this is more of a resource for students, so if you have students who have some problems, this is an additional, you just download it, it works right with Word 2007, and it adds in the add-ins, so it's a really nice resource. So all of those things are listed on this page, and you can link directly to them. And then I've added a number of resources for ebooks and e-text on this page. One other one, if you're interested in web accessibility, if you're doing online teaching, a great resource is WebAIM, and there's lots of resources. Okay, didn't want to show that page because there's a little error when I put that in. We'll fix that. I will definitely fix that. But there's a lot of web accessibility training and some nice resources there. Another resource is one other one, if I can get back. Okay. I think, you know.
We have
What?
30 things open there.
I know we do. I know. And I can't, it's like, okay, can I see the right one? I'm looking for our, oh, did I just do, there we go. There we go, because I didn't closed it is my problem. We also have, so you can get to these links through this toolbar here, training materials, interactivity, but we also have this link through an agenda, and so where we link directly to all these things. So we're going to move on to our next topic, and again, we know we only have an hour and 15 minutes.
But we'd like for you to jump in and tell us of other resources in these categories that you use and ask questions if there's something that's not clear.
Yeah, because we can add these. Again, all of us are members of this wiki, so we can keep adding on to this and make this a site that we can use, you know, for anybody at the university.
So as Cheryl kind of transitions back, we want to talk also next about some interactivity and multimedia things. And Dr. Rathel uses the iClickers student response system, so she's going to show you an example of that. Do you want to talk about it first?
If you'll just put on the PowerPoint.
All right.
And then I can show them some examples there.
And they have clickers.
Okay.
They have to turn them on.
Do display. Then I can transition with my remote. Thank you. The iClicker system is a remote system that students can purchase or you can buy yourself to have for students to use in the classroom, and it makes the class more interactive. I teach large sections of classes, sometimes 50, 60 students in a class, and I keep my students actively engaged throughout the lesson using their remote system. You can embed questions throughout a PowerPoint, but you don't have to do that. You can ask questions off the fly. The students, when they respond, you can see on a histogram the response, so you can use it as a formative type of assessment. What do I need to do next? Should we discuss this? Should I go back and reteach? You could use it as a summative type of assessment too. Let me show you some examples. Everyone has your remote. My remote is just like your remote. Usually the students' remotes are white, but it's just a difference in color. As an instructor remote, you just take the number off the back and put it in and input it into the software that's your remote. And you can use it to advance your slides. To advance your slides and to start and stop polling and show the histogram. The box looks just like on the screen here. It's a small little box, and in the USB port is that little dump drive that has all the software that you need there. So you can, it's very, very portable. Just take that little box with you if there's already a desktop in the classroom that you're using, plug it in, or if you have to bring your laptop with you. There is separate software for PC and Mac. I've used it on the PC. I have a colleague that's been trying to use it on the Mac and has had some issues there with displaying it. But I have had no issues at all with the PC. Let me show you some examples. You have your remotes. So these are some examples of questions that I have very beginning of class when we're trying to learn how to use the remotes. In 1935, what was Bugs Bunny's originally called? And do you see the little box at the top that says Start and Display? In my classroom, you can't put an answer until I start the polling for you. In my classroom, I go over the question first, and because my point is to have students actively engaged in the lesson, not that I want to assess to see if they read what they were supposed to read overnight. You can use it that way. So there are different settings that you can do with the remote. Once I start the polling, it's going to start a countdown from 30 seconds because I set it that way, because I allow my students to get together, discuss it, chat, and then I say, okay, are we ready to start the polling? and then I start, and then they see a 30-second countdown. You can do a count up, or you can take that off altogether.
Now, are they going to aim toward the antenna?
You do not have to aim. It's radio frequency. You could hide it under your shirt and it would still show.
Don't try it.
So now you can poll in your answer. I can wait till everyone responds so that I can see exactly how everyone falls with your answers, or I could go ahead and show the display as you're answering. It takes the very last answer that you input. So if you did something and you change your mind and you want to change it to something else, you can. So I don't show the histogram till after everyone has already answered. As you can see there. That was Happy Rabbit, by the way.
Tina's putting in different
Happy
answers.
Rabbit. And using my instructor remote, I can then make that selection green. And so it knows in the software that that's the correct answer. So if I wanted to use it for grading, everyone that chose that answer would have that one marked correct. Okay, and I can take the histogram off, advance slide using my remote again, start the polling. How old were Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and Jimi Hendrix when they died? 17, 27, 37, or 47? You can see there are 10 that have responded. I'm going to go ahead and show you the response. And it was, I can use my remote to show the correct answer once the polling is stopped. I can go ahead and stop it since I have the 30-second countdown. It's another option, and mark the 27. Okay. You get this response. Now the student 1, 2, 3, and 4 in black, I have imposed over the student user IDs. Students can register their clicker so that you can use it for grading. I use it more for participation, but you can use it for grading. You get this kind of report, and you see the top of each one, the different sessions. You can click on set that session, and you'll get what looks like this. And it shows you the number of questions that you had and the answers that you had for each question. There is a show the screenshot and a show the histogram, and you can click those. So if you forget the question, if you didn't mark the correct answer as you're going through your lesson, you want to go back and mark them or make sure you mark them correctly, you can show the screenshot and go through each one of them and make sure that you marked those correctly. And then you can go back to your iGrader, select that you want to export it, and then import it back to Blackboard right into the gradebook. So, I give a maximum of 10 points each time for my students, but like I said, it's more for participation because I allow them to chat and discuss the answers before we do it. But lots of different ways you can use it. And this isn't the only classroom response system. It's the one that I like because it's just so easy to use and portable, and you can do questions off the fly. You don't have to program in questions ahead of time, but there are other types. And Kelly uses a different one, the CPS system that she's going to tell you about.
I have a question for you, Tina. Sorry. Do any of your students buy their remotes?
My students do buy their
Do they?
remotes.
How much are they?
They're $35, and they can trade it back into the bookstore just like a textbook at the end of the semester.
Any other questions?
Yeah, if we go back to the panel, then Kella can talk about the student response system she used.
Yes, I've been using CPS. It's called Classroom Performance System. Oh my goodness, for about 6, 7 years, you think? It's an old set now, and it's had its better days, but nevertheless, I'm very blessed that we have 2 sets in the college. And this semester I'm teaching a class of, I guess 80 students, and so the 2 sets don't exactly cover every student in the classroom. So I've cut down on my use considerably. I have been quite interested though, however, determining which is the best way to use CPS, to use these clicker systems. So a couple of years ago, I happened to be teaching 2 big classes, and I thought I would just compare their use. In one class, what I did was I had the CPS quizzes each week, and it was to assess their reading, indeed, to assess that they read it. I don't know whether any of you have any problems with undergraduates reading their textbook, but that seems to be an issue in my class. And so I thought, and so, if you think about it, it makes sense. Encourage them to read because there's going to be a quiz. In the other class, however, I told them it was for them to self-assess their understanding of their readings. And also, I indicated that it was a way for me to assess their understanding of the readings, something that I could base, subsequent instruction on. So what I found at the end, no surprise, no great surprise, there was no difference between the two groups, but there was a lot more anxiety in the group that had CPS that was punitive in nature. If they didn't do well on the quiz, they lost points. The other class, it was just whether or not they did it. It was just how did they feel intrinsically about it. But again, I found personally, I have made the instructional decision to utilize it primarily for the purposes of students self-assessing their understanding before a test, and for my purposes, for me to really get a clearer view of what they don't understand. I did for my class this semester, although each one didn't have a wand, some of them had to share one, but I did a review for the test one with that, and it seemed to be very effective. I saw some things that they clearly, if more than half the class misses it, just like you were saying, it helps to reteach it. So it was a good opportunity for me to do that. That being said, this seems like a fabulous system, and I'm so tickled that I had an opportunity to see Gina. I'd spoken with her briefly about it, but I'm tickled to have seen it in action, because it clearly has got a lot of smoothness to it that I'm not experiencing currently.
I had a lot of the anxiety when I first started using it until I started making sure that students understood that I wasn't using it to really test to see that they had read everything, that I was using it to keep them actively engaged. It's easy with those huge sections for students to sit up in the back and read the newspaper and text.
And one thing I've noted too is, it's most of these clickers, they're about 4 million in use now, and most of them are used in K through 12. And particularly, here we are teaching future teachers. They had best understand the technology that they're going to be having the actual units in their schools. So
I've had lots of good feedback too. After the initial anxiety factor, I've had lots of really good feedback. Students that are glad that we're using it.
Yeah, and again, my students, the ones that were in the self-reflection, self-assessment section, they reported at a significant level they would be much more likely to utilize that tool in their classroom. But the ones that were in the what I call the operant conditioning section, they did not seem to be as excited about it. Do you have a question?
What is the startup cost on the iClickers? Roughly, just a rough estimate.
The system itself, I think, is like $200. I don't know for sure because I worked out a deal with the company. I have at least 100 students every semester that buy a remote, so they comped me the system.
Yeah.
And it costs the students, I know my son's
$35 a remote.
My son's at USC here, and he has one of his teachers uses it in a very large class. $35.
And they sell them back on Amazon or back to the bookstore.
Are there any other questions? All right, Mitch is going to show us a little bit about another interactive resource, and that is Breeze, which is now Adobe Connect Professional. So, Mitch, do you want to tell them a little bit about it first and then show them?
Well, on our wiki space, I think we have the PDF. Mitchell West, when I first started using Breeze, Mitchell West sent me a PDF on how to set it up, and what he has to do is make an account for you on Adobe Connect, and I did that. And so if you can download the PDF from the wiki space, and
keep going down.
it's down there a little bit.
They don't have
There it is.
Yeah.
It's on the computer now. And the instructions are real simple. Basically, what you do is you set up the Adobe Presenter account, and then it just puts it into your PowerPoint. So when you open up a PowerPoint to make a presentation, the very last button on the menu bar says Adobe Presenter, and you just click that, and you record your presentation, and then you have to publish it to the server, and that is all explained. Very easy process. And of course, the nice thing is then when your online students get the presentation, they also have the narration. And so what I thought I'd do is just come over and show you real quickly just an example of what it looks like here. Now this is just a lecture. One of the things I found is the students really like to have a separate thing they can click to download and print the lecture. And so I put that underneath it. And then up here is the lecture that I did on Adobe Presenter, and the student just goes there and clicks it. Today we're going to talk about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA, oftentimes just known as the IDEA, which is our nation's federal special education law. And you can see we have
in most school
different,
districts,
you can go between the slides.
So that would be the next basic step. Eligibility is determined. Based on the information, the parents and the group decides if a student is eligible.
Okay, and a couple things I found just from feedback from the students is they don't like them when they're too long, but they don't like them when they're too short either. Mm-hmm. So I found that between 20 and 30 minutes is a good length. Students like that. They can attend to it. If it's too long, it's kind of hard to attend to. They lose interest. If it's too short, they don't seem to like it either. So, and that's been just a real excellent resource, and I think really essential for online courses. Did you want to say anything on that?
I was just going to comment again on Breeze. I have been using that for online classes as well. And as Mitch's feedback has indicated, students don't like them to be too long. There's no question about that. And they like it. It has the length. You can tell how it's, how much more time you have. It's interesting that one of the things that I don't do is post the notes, because I think it's really helpful for students to take notes from the Breeze. Mm-hmm. I think that may be just a philosophical difference. Mm-hmm. But, again, I know as a student, sometimes it is nice to have those notes there and then just augment them in a way. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I had found, at first I didn't post them either, and then students are so used in many of their classes, they're used to getting mm-hmm. the notes from the professor, and mm-hmm. I had a lot of requests, so I thought,
mm-hmm.
I'll do that.
I provide the notes too with my mm-hmm. Breeze presentations. But you can also make it interactive. Mm-hmm. With questions. You can embed questions. Here, I sound like someone who really likes to ask a lot of questions. But you can do true, false, and multiple choice questions in your Breeze presentation, and it stops, and so the student has to select the answer, and then you can program feedback. So if they get it wrong, no, go back and try again, or no, that wasn't the correct answer. This is why this is the correct answer. Any kind of feedback you want to give. And then it cycles them back through again to ask the question over again. Or you can opt to just go to the next slide so that students are actively engaged instead of just sitting there watching the Breeze presentation.
Also, I guess it couldn't be easier to do. I mean, if you go onto the Wikispaces site and download that information, being able to get an account on it, very easy to do.
If we jump back to the computer for a second, Kella wants to show some features of what she's done using Breeze.
One thing that we do know about online learning is that research has found that whenever it's personalized a little bit, the students tend to learn better. So maybe it's just me, but the research does support it. It helps to be maybe a little chatty in some cases. Maybe that's not best for everybody, but for me, that's just my style, it appears. So generally, whenever I put up a Breeze presentation, I always put just a little blurb about what it's about. And again, I'm not going to show the whole thing, but I did want to just illustrate a few features of the Adobe Acrobat. What I do
You are inundated with theories now.
I don't particularly want to hear that, but if you notice right here, you can click on the thumbnails so that they can indeed navigate around. And I have my notes there as well. And they can see that, but again, this is the feature that, as you were saying, doesn't print out, which can be.
How do you use the notes? Do you actually have additional information there, or do you have the script for the slides?
It's essentially the script. Mm-hmm. Another thing that students like, and maybe you've mentioned it, but they are able to navigate around, within the Adobe and go back and review slides, and I find that very helpful. Another thing that research is beginning to tell us about online learning is, let's see if I can pull this back up, is that whenever you have images and text, that it's really helpful that they support each other and that they're not extraneous details there. That does indeed impede learning. And I know in the past, what I've done very frequently is wanted to add cute graphics or things that are just precious. But in fact, they impede learning. And so I've taken that to heart now. Also, research is suggesting that it's effective not to just read exactly what's on the screen, but to let students process it, that in terms of the notion of redundancy, that you don't want to be redundant, because they're going to be focusing their attention on the text, and if you're narrating it and reading it out, then it conflicts. It really does kind of overwhelm their working memory, and it provides too much cognitive load for them to process the information. So I guess that's about all I'm going to say right now, and I will just go back to the wiki and we'll go from there. What's next?
Jane.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Sure. About that, when you're doing PowerPoint slides, you're only using images that correspond with
The topic or the content,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But say, for example, if there's a diagram there, you can verbally explain it, but you want to make sure it's not too much information. So,
One of the things that I've done in my Blackboard, my Adobe Acrobat Connect presentations, is one of the things you said is if there's an image in there, it's usually something that's got like a graph or something. And I also give that to them as a handout that they could print out and look at, because it's very hard to see that on some of the screens, any of the details within there. And that is helpful. The other thing that I provide, instead of the notes, I do an outline, where it's really just a big old outline, and they have to decide whether it's important to fill in or not.
well,
Sort of
partial
guided.
note-taking is a helpful study strategy. So.
Are there any other questions about interactive things before we go on to our organizational tools? Concept mapping?
There are lots of uses for concept mapping, also called visual graphic organizers, a plethora of things that they include. You can use it in a variety of ways, as this very poorly organized chart that I put up there myself. So all I can do is blame myself for it, but it is not very easy to read, but either as a learning strategy, an instructional strategy, as a teaching tool, or a collaborative thinking tool. I have a few examples that I put up in the wiki that shows different uses. But I also want to scroll down. You can see there are just scads of available graphic organizers, concept mapping and mind mapping software. It's called a lot of different things, and each thing it's called is used for a different purpose. But if you look down, these are some that Cheryl and Susan had, and then I added some more. Most of these aren't free, though. Unfortunately, they're pretty pricey. But you can get a good idea that this is a popular tool now. I think it has to do with spatial organization. We know that people do remember things spatially many times. So to me, it's a very viable tool, and one that I particularly like. Here's a good article here, again by the people from CAST that Cheryl mentioned, and it talks about the different tree structures of graphic organizers. And as you can see here, when you scroll down, it defines them. It shows the different ways you can arrange the concepts for different uses and so on. I'm not going to read it. You can just peruse this at your leisure. Let's see. Okay. And I would like to, all these links, of course, go to these sites that offer these. I would like to show you just a couple of examples. In this case, they're done from different sites. This one right here is by a student in a class I'm teaching now, and she did this with Gliffy at gliffy.com. This was an assignment I had just at the very beginning of the semester for them to, it was a learning theory course, and I wanted them just to think about, their learning, their personal learning network. And many of them were just putting down, USC, and I said, no, think about who all do you learn from? I mean, think about it. We learn 85% of what we learn is not in school, and so so Karen used Gliffy, and I'm glad to see that it allowed for a lot of it has a lot of affordances that some of the others don't have. So you can get a look at this one from Gliffy. That's one I'm going to explore using personally. This is one I did in Smart Draw. This is just a review for my students. I gave them the specific concepts, and then I put the key terms under there rather than just a list of words of glossary that I wanted them to use. I'm kind of into the graphic part of it because I'm a former art educator, so I play too much with the colors and things like that don't matter probably, but anyway, to me they do. And then, again, not wanting to take up too much time, this was an inspiration by a student. This was done a number of years ago, probably maybe about 5 years ago or so, and it was just one I happened to pull up today when I was trying to do this, where, again, her concept that she had to use as a way to learn, to build her own knowledge structure, was academic motivation. And in cognitive psychology, you know, we talk about all these kinds of neat terms, I think, but other people may not be as in love with. But you can see here that what she did was she has a little note. She can put a note and a definition of terms and so on, and she's linked them all together regarding their relationship with each other. And then I guess that's it. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, we're going to move on to some teaching activities and go back to the panel and let them discuss a little bit on how they use survey tools, puzzle making tools, quizzes, book builder, Toondoo, and Ruby Star at the forteachers.org site. So we'll open that up to the panel to jump in and talk about any of those activities they'd like.
Well, if you leave the monitor up, you know, I can't talk without a prompt. One of the things that I'll just jump into Book Builder and Toondoo, because does everybody know about Book Builder?
No.
Book Builder was developed by CAST, another one of those CAST things, and in Book Builder it was originally set up to do multiple ways that we can present information to students. So they have, they set it up with this idea that it would only be for young children, except that a lot of people have taken it much farther than that. And there's a whole set of books that people have created, and if I just even search by high school, you can get all kinds of biology classifying animals. So this teacher has set up a book for science on classifying animals using Book Builder, and you can add in these little characters so that Pedro might jump up and give you additional information about the topic. And there are 3 characters you can add in. And so and he'll read it to you. And then, you know, so it's another way that students can, so again, she just has Pedro, and then Pedro, I didn't pick one that has more examples. One of my students in our educational technology program used this tool to talk about Web 2.0 tools, and she was working in a group with 3 other people. So she named her little agents the same name. So there was April and Stacy and Tyrone were the agents' names, and they each would talk about how they used the particular tool. So it's just another way to present information. Instead of doing the PowerPoint, it's a way to, you know, for students to say, okay, have we processed this enough that we can then present it to somebody else? So it's a fun.
Are you saying each of us should have been an agent? We should have
Yeah,
built
we
a
should have
book
put
for this
something together
presentation.
and had each of us be an agent and give a little, you know, we could say something and mine would cough and, you know. The other one is Toondoo, and Toondoo lets you create comic strips. Again, in looking at the way of how can students do things, multiple ways that we can present, so that not everybody would write a research paper, but again, multiple ways of presentation. So it's, you know, you got to be careful about some of these on here because they're kind of silly. But a group that I worked with in the fall created this really wonderful teacher's guide. And they're a group of science teachers. And they created this teacher's guide for Toon-Do. And in it, they even developed a very nice rubric so that if you had a concept you wanted your students to do, they said this is how you would look at the rubric, and they have examples, and they put this all in there. So it's a really neat little tool that they developed to go along with this. Yeah, and so I just want to make a comment about those two because those are ones that aren't normal, normal tools. The other one, for teachers.org, has, and I mentioned the whole idea of doing rubrics. For teachers.org has a number of tools. They have quizzes and rubrics and ways that you can organize websites, but they have this one site called Rubistar. And what it allows you to do is to create a rubric. And I just, Susan and I presented at a conference last week, and some teachers say, I use that all the time because if I have to do rubrics for any project, I use this for my own rubrics. If I have to do rubrics for our national accreditation for every project we do, and it's a way to get me started when I think about, well, what would be the advanced performance, what would be minimal performance. So you can take any one of these, so video pre-production, and you can take this and it has categories. So if I want to look at how is their concept, they give you information and I can add into any of these. So team has a clear picture of what they're trying to achieve. How is their script? Script is complete, and so it gives you the levels. You can change this from numbers to like excellent, good, and all those other categories, and you can come up with a score and you can add it and you can print it out, you can export it, and you can create your own rubric. So it's a great way to do rubrics for different projects, and that always opens in a new page. Susan, you want to jump in and talk about puzzles and surveys? And
the surveys are the things that I probably spend the most time with. And you know that the university supports Flashlight Online and now Class Climate. And quite frankly, we were not real happy with Flashlight Online. It just had not grown up after the first few years. And so we started using SurveyMonkey. And SurveyMonkey has a free version that you have a lot of limitations. You can have 10 questions per survey and that sort of thing. So we got pretty good at using SurveyMonkey, and then the university has started to support Class Climate. And quite frankly, I haven't learned Class Climate. I don't know if any of you have or not. Have anybody here used that? It's by Scantron, so I'm sure it's a wonderful product. And I just haven't taken the time.
It's a lot of upfront work on it.
Because I just throw things into SurveyMonkey at this point.
I gave it a try and found out that it was
not as intuitive as
the
SurveyMonkey.
The learning curve was too high for me for my time constraints. So.
But since we're always looking for free tools or tools that somebody else is already paying for, I definitely want to learn Class Climate, and I need to spend more time.
Well, and I think that's both of our philosophy, that a lot of these resources that we put on here are all free. We're into free.
We're cheap.
And I know
free or cheap.
With me, whenever I give an assignment for students, such as the the personal learning network, with some of these products, as I mentioned on the wiki, they're 30-day free downloads, and I just make sure the assignment they can get done within that.
That's right.
And they need to have exported it as a JPEG or another file, otherwise you can't open it up without that. So there are some limitations on that, but we have to go to something that's cost efficient for students. I mean, there's just no question about it. So I'm glad to see some other sites that offer quality software.
As the panel continues to talk, if we jump back to them, I'll let them continue talking about communication and collaboration. And we've already looked at one example on how you're using a wiki to provide this agenda to us. Could you talk a little bit about how you use wikis and blogs or discussion boards or sites within Google to develop communication with your students?
Demo?
Do what?
Do you want to go demo your
massive.
Do you want to explain it first and then demo?
Well, just that when I first started using wikis was I'm one of those people who always used to give handouts. I mean, handouts and handouts and handouts. And for every class, for every topic for every class, I had at least one handout that was a list of resources. Most of them were links. Occasionally there were books and other resources, but primarily they were links. And I was getting to the point where I just couldn't keep up with with keeping track of them for one thing, but then also I would find a new resource to add to the link or to add to the handout, and I would have pages of add to such and such a list. So anyway, it was just getting totally out of hand. So I made a website. I paid for a domain name, and I started to, I learned Dreamweaver, and I learned, how to do it. And what I discovered was I still had all these pages of add to this list, add to that list, add to this list. So I went to Wikispaces and said, shoot, from any computer that I'm on, I can go to Wikispaces, open up the handout about, IDEA, for instance, or something, and just add that resource I just found in there right then live. And so I started putting my lists of resources on my susanwquinn.wikispaces.com page. And what I've discovered is I've been able to keep up a lot more with just keeping track of my lists of resources, my resource lists. And I don't know if that's where Cheryl is going or not. But I just found that ABC list is almost embarrassing, because every time I add a new list, I add it to the alphabetical list. And, it really has gotten out of hand.
No, but if you can flip to the computer so you can really see, this is a work of art. She has an ABC list of all her links. Oh, we should do I for,
Oh, I finally found a Q. And I think I've got one letter I think that I don't have anything for. But, and in quizzes and tests, it was tests and quizzes, and so I changed it to quizzes and tests just so I have something on Q. But to me, that's how I got involved in it. And now I use them for everything. Basically, they're just free, easy web spaces or web pages, instead of going and doing Dreamweaver and putting it and then having to FTP to update it and all that. I can just make a web page. Now, I actually use it, when I set it up as restricted. Wikispaces and the other two that we have on here, PBWiki and WetPaint, which are geared more toward K-12. But they usually will have the choice of having it wide open, that anybody can go in and make any changes. And basically, I don't want anybody messing with my lists, I guess, or something, I don't know. So I have it that it's the second level, which is anybody can view it, but I'm the only person who can change it. And then there also is a third level that you can pay $5 a month or something like that, where it can be totally private. But I tend to use that middle level where anybody can view it, but only I can change it. Now, the one we made for today's presentation, the group of us are all members, so we can all get to it, and anybody else can ask to be a member. Then they can also add things to it. But otherwise, it's set up so that only people who are a member can make changes.
So this is Susan. So anybody, like she said, anyone can view it. Another one, this is an example of a collaborative, is there's a South Carolina Collaborative Assistive Technology, and there's a group of people in the state who all work in the area of assistive tech, and I said, well, why don't we set up a wiki and we'll put all the information there. So we've just kind of gone public with this, but right now there's about 10 of us who have rights to edit, but everyone else can just view it. And we've just decided it's collaborative. If they want to tell us what to add in, we will. But so notice that this one says protected in the corner. Just to show you another format, I'm using WetPaint this semester. Students in a technology class are creating thematic units, and in WetPaint, everybody's unit is in this one site. So I can go in here and I can look at where my students are as creating their lessons all in this one. When they're finished, and again, and what I like about WetPaint too is it has levels. So within this circus lesson, this is my model, this way I can show this one. Within the circus lesson, I have my standards and tools, but then I have my lessons within that. So it kind of categorizes it underneath. But this I find is really nice because all of this will be together, and then when the class is finished, they'll all have those resources. And they can go to this one WetPaint wiki, and they can get those resources from everybody, and they can keep sharing. So I think it's a nice, it's just a wonderful tool for people to collaborate. Susan and I went to the business conference this weekend, and people are using the Google sites.
Live. what was it?
The iSites at google.com.
Google.
iGoogle, and that's not,
Yeah,
iGoogle
not-
is personal pages, but being able to collaborate, again, it's another wiki. But all of those, the ones that we've used, WetPaint, TidyWiki, and Wikispaces, all allow you as an educator to have free sites. I've sort of used a couple of them without the ads, but as an educator, you can get free sites without the ads on the side.
I'd like to add that Blackboard has the wiki to it
Right.
as well.
And I use that for certain things that only anything that's private,
Yes.
you know, when they're introducing themselves and talking about, you know, their experiences with, you know, teaching or whatever. I keep that within the Blackboard site
We don't
because
have
it's
to-
password protected.
We don't have to show it, but on this page, I do have an example from an undergraduate class. The big class, I had them do their own wiki, and none of them in that class had ever done a wiki before. So it was, to me, it's a learning experience for them and for me too. But nevertheless, I have them put up as a way to get to know each other and for me to get to know them primarily. I have them put up a picture of themselves and then their resume, and then they also have to put in some of their career goals, just to have them thinking about their philosophy of teaching and you know.
And you
things
do that
such as
within Blackboard.
And I do that within Blackboard. And what I am finding, and I could have some input from you folks, is it's cumbersome because I've got this list of 80 people, and then whenever, I mean, it doesn't alphabetize itself, so it's the order in which they made the wiki, and I'll need some help to be able to organize a little bit better. I wouldn't do it just the same way this semester because it's really cumbersome looking for a particular student. There didn't seem to be a search
It
component for it.
alphabetizes
What I've done-
by however
Yeah.
they set up their name,
Yeah.
their page.
Yeah.
What I've done within Blackboard is
In the navigation
Yeah.
panel, but not in the
Yeah.
No.
in the list where.
with the ed tech students that I teach, they have to actually make the link from the front page in the wiki in Blackboard.
That's what they do.
Well, what I do with the non-ed tech students when I'm teaching special ed is I go ahead and put their names on there and make a page for them
That's
ahead
a
of
good
time,
idea.
and then I can alphabetize it. I can put it
Yeah,
by
that's
groups,
what I'm- that's
that
what
kind of
I'm-
thing. So that's what I've done to try to.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, they don't need to learn how to
Yeah.
make that link and the home and back and all that.
Yeah.
Stuff.
I have chosen to keep as much as I can within Blackboard, even for my graduate level classes. And so what I did was I made a community wiki in Blackboard for, say, for example, my ET 709 class this semester. And they have, they can link to their external wiki site. So it's really nice. They'll have a picture of themselves. And then I think, like Cheryl, I actually imported all their pictures and made it into a banner to put on the front of Blackboard because this is a totally online class. And I really and truly, I need to feel like I can connect a name with a face. So this way I see all my students from the get-go when I open up that particular course in Blackboard. I know their names by heart now. I feel
And
like
they never
know them a
change
bit.
what seat they're in.
They never change what seat. They always have on
It's in the same place.
That's right. So, very true. Good point.
Well, for those of them who don't know the difference between a wiki and a blog, would someone talk just a little bit about the difference and how they might be used a little bit differently while she's getting this set up?
I always think of blogs historically as being journals, basically, that people, you know, have their, flow of their, consciousness or whatever, and it does it in reverse order, and you basically post your entries in reverse chronological order. What I use the blogs for, and I do this within Blackboard, is basically that's how I have students answer prompts. I used to use the discussion board, and the discussion board in Blackboard, you had to open up the different boxes and then do a reply and open up the box to the reply, and it just was very tedious. But what I do is I have a blog as the activity, and so I have the instructions is always at the bottom of the blog after people start putting things in, and I'll have a link to an article, read this article, and then I'll say, answer these 3 questions about it, and then the students just enter. And they're in reverse chronological order, and I just teach them very early to go down to the bottom if but while you're scrolling, look at your classmates' responses. And then they can also comment on an individual's entry also. So there's a lot of good feedback that way. And I think that in the discussion board, they just didn't tend to open up each other's. Whereas this, maybe because they have to scroll down, they, they see each other's, and they say, oh, well, I wonder what so-and-so said, and then they respond to them. So that's how we use blogs. It's not sort of the traditional, here's my, how my day went today, or whatever that you think of blogs and the journaling feature of blogs. Do the rest of you use blogs?
I'm using discussion board.
I use the discussion board
because I like the collect feature. I had trouble locating, when I tried to do the blog one semester, I had trouble locating everybody's. I mean, I don't know what the problem was, but it's probably a personal problem with me.
Now, we actually have audience here, does it?
I think it depends on the number, too.
Yeah,
You know?
probably, yeah, probably so.
A nice new feature with the discussion board is that you can click on the unread, and then they'll all come up, so you don't have to click through them individually.
Yeah, that's a nice feature.
Do you see the flow of the conversation, though, that way?
No, you don't.
Well, Cheryl has a. I'm sorry, Jan, do you have a question?
I'm interested in assessing the students that contribute to wikis in terms of do you have experience with group projects where I mean that's the value of one of the values of the wiki is that it's collaborative, right? So do you have are there ways to assess individual students that have made contributions easily in any of your experiences?
Well, you can track. I saw when Keller was on this morning. You can track all the changes people have made, so you can tell how often someone has been on and go back and see what they've changed.
You have a very
And you can actually revert back to if somebody does mess something up, you can revert back to it earlier.
You know, and I used wikis in the fall in my instructional design class, and that was first of all, you know, they all hate group projects. You know, they really don't.
Is that a universal?
Is that a
It
universal?
is in the
I don't
College of
know,
Education.
but I know Kella's experienced that, and you know, they don't like those group projects. But I actually, at the end, I had them fill out a little survey questionnaire, and they had to rate other people in their group. And then what I did is, you know, if one person consistently had low ratings because of their participation or non-participation in the project, then I went back to the wiki and I went through the logs to find out, you know, how much they were on and how much they tracked and everything.
Yeah,
but it is difficult.
I used a peer assessment as well, and they had a rubric,
it's
and
hard.
they rather than posting the peer assessments in Blackboard, I think they have that feature now. But I know last year when I was doing this online class, I actually just had them email me their but that's a new feature to Blackboard, so
yeah,
but you can do it in privacy.
I like that suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, there is that new peer and self-assessment, but the one thing I noticed about that is people have to adhere firmly to dates. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I teach graduate classes, and they don't all get stuff in on time. Maybe it's just me, but, you know, so if something, they just didn't pay attention to the time things were due, and so then they got blocked out of submitting. And that was, so I need to work on that a little more.
I had a student last spring that submitted his peer assessments of the other people in his group in July. So his class ended in April.
I think I had that same student. No,
Well, Cheryl has up on the computer screen now an example of how to put in their students' pictures. So
yeah, and I made it small, so I didn't want to, you know, work on confidentiality.
I want to learn your secret because I just kind of made it up as I went. So
well, what I did is I actually have a you know, I had the wiki and I had everybody created their own page. And then what they did is, you know, they created the page. And actually by now, well, she's actually, the reason I pulled up hers is because she has a link to her own personal, to the web page right now too, that I wanted them to do. But the point is that I had them all put a picture on here, and then I take their picture, I just do a quick screen capture. This is probably an easier way, but I do a quick screen capture, put it in a table in Word, and then I do a screen capture of the whole table and turn it into a JPEG.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Because I did find that the only place you could put it in announcements was up in the banner area.
Yeah, and so I put it in announcements. Yeah. But that's true. I mean, it really helps me connect with people when I look in and I open that page and I see their faces.
Yeah, and one thing I did with my big section of 401, which is the undergraduate class this semester, was, you know, again, like Cheryl, I had them post their picture in their wiki.
Go back to it.
And I got all those photographs and then put them in a PowerPoint, and then posted the PowerPoint in Google Docs, and then had them go into Google Docs and then put their name and so on. And then for the first few classes, I would just play while I was getting set up with other things. I would play that PowerPoint just so that they would feel like, I mean, I don't like big classes. I don't like online classes. I like small groups of students that I can communicate with. So this is mainly for me, I think, more than them. But you know, they liked that. They just thought it was really cool to be up on the big screen in 126 and see their images, you know. But the problem is, a lot of them don't look like their pictures. You know, they're all dolled up,
Glamour
prom dress, you know.
Yeah, that's when you meet them in person, and you're like,
I said,
okay,
you don't
this
look
is-
like your picture. That's what
your hair's a totally different color. You know?
Yeah, I got it chopped off. But.
Right, we've got time. I'd like to save some time at the end for questions. So we're going to talk a little bit about organization tools and different things that the panel uses. So anyone who wants to jump in on that, Cheryl's at the computer. So that's what you get for staying here.
I guess that's what it is.
Or
Well, under the other things under organization we had were things like bookmarking. Does anybody use, bookmarking as a tool, like Delicious, Magnolia? Susan, those are the ones.
We've got somebody in the audience because, yeah. I'd love to hear that because my Wikispaces thing with all those lists of links, after a couple years of that, I started realizing that, ooh, maybe I should be using Delicious. But then I'd gotten so far into this other site that I haven't done that.
Yeah,
But
it was a case I worked over in the library, and we had HTML pages, and they were just pages and pages of links. Half of them were dead or outdated information that we were pointing people to. So I used Delicious to create one based on a subject. And one of the best things is, of course, you can tag each site. So you can say, these are your periodic tables. These are your online databases. These are your online search engines. So they can organize within the list for the specific type of information they're looking for. And Delicious allows you to do tag clouds and tag roles that you can embed into other websites very easily. So they can just go in and see, oh, well, there's a whole bunch of periodic table links here, or there are a few search engines over here, and here are some property information on chemicals here. They can click on the links there in the tag cloud and see all the links that I've selected for them for relevant information on that. So
Tina, we have a new presentation.
I was thinking that exactly. There you go. That's
Andrea
presentation.
Wright? Are you Andrea?
I am.
Yes,
She's in my class. And
I
you don't
know.
look like your picture. Your hair's shorter.
This is what we were just talking about. I told her, I was like, I've changed my hair.
Exactly. But
Andrea also did some wonderful little screencast videos on how to use the e-journals in the.
And that's what I was going to comment on because
Yes,
she
they're
put
wonderful.
that out, and then I put it in our class, and I put thanks to Andrea for doing this. I put it because it's a useful tool. It really is.
did you
Yeah,
use
they were
Jing
wonderful.
to do those? Or?
I did do the Jing for those. It took me about 30 minutes or so because I knew I wasn't going to edit them. I just wanted something quick, straightforward. I've been through the process myself 50 million times, so I didn't really, I had an example in mind, just went through, used Jing, because the big thing is you can't edit it like you can with Camtasia.
But they're perfect. But they're perfect, though.
For those who
They're
don't
wonderful.
know what Jing is, Susan,
Yeah.
would you mind if we go back to the panel, just describing basically what Jing
do we don't
is?
have any examples, do we?
No.
No.
Just describe.
I actually use Camtasia because, like some of these other tools, I learned to use Camtasia first, so it's easier for me just to throw something in Camtasia, edit it, and be done. And Jing is a 5-minute version, a maximum of 5-minute screencasts is what they're called. And anything you can do on the computer, you can capture. You can capture opening files, scrolling down, highlighting something, writing something in, whatever you can do on the computer. Basically, it's taking a picture of your computer and you're narrating over it, or you can narrate over it. And Jing is free, but Jing is limited to 5 minutes each. And I have some longer than 5-minute Camtasia movies about how to do different things. But to me, that's just a critical training piece so that we can show people how to, everything from how to log into Blackboard for the first time to how to do some complicated feature, in Dreamweaver or something. And so I've been using Camtasia for a long time, and I just, it's just easy when I need to do something. I just throw it in real quickly into Camtasia.
As a Mac user, I got into Jing because Camtasia is not available for the Mac. And so I got into using Jing, and actually I find the 5-minute limit, it's good for me.
That's probably.
I probably go on and on.
Good for your students.
Yeah, it really is, because that's about as long as they want to listen.
One thing that I just can't help but note, though, is if you look at the number of products that are out there to help us with instruction and teaching and so on, it's overwhelming. And I know one of the things that I sense all the time is like I'll get another link from Cheryl or from Susan or from somebody, and it's like, I can't keep up. And so, it's like I almost start hyperventilating over just one more thing I've got.
I do that every morning.
Yeah. But a lot of times when you find something that's tried and true, like Camtasia, I still use that, and I really just love it, and I'm not going to let go of it for anything. I need to learn a lot. I mean, Andrea, in terms of collaboration, to hear more information about things like that, we can't know everything. I mean, that's what is making me, I'm trying to tell myself that it's okay not to be caught up all the time with technology, because new stuff's emerging. Right. And I'm one of these old folk. It took me I'm not a millennial child, who grew up. I'm a digital native. I'm a very elderly digital person. But it's just so hard, and you've got to understand that some of these new people coming along, like Andrea, for example, we can learn from them, and I just am tickled to have someone that I can learn from, because that's really what teaching is about. Is learning from your students.
And I think that was a good summary statement of what we've done today, but I would like to leave, we've got about 10 minutes for questions. Any of you have questions, or you're having maybe some issues in your classroom, you don't know exactly how to have the students present the information, or they're not grasping the information, or anything that you want the expert's opinion on.
No, the elderly digital. What did you call it?
Elderly digital native.
I was just crawling up out of the hole.
No offense, Gina, but we all probably fit in there.
I just want to follow up on that digital native. A lot of people say, oh, they're digital natives, but, we still have to teach them the culture. You still have to teach kids the culture. I mean, I have younger students who, they know some things, but there's big gaps in their use of technology.
A lot of it has to do, to my mind, with motivation. If they're motivated to learn to use the cell phone, they're highly motivated to learn all the little ways of downloading games and so on.
Well,
but when it comes to things even like Blackboard, you would think that doing a wiki in Blackboard was equivalent to neurological surgery of some sort. I mean, and they are not willing to take a risk. And I have to keep encouraging them just to try it one more time, because sometimes you have to, maybe delete it and then just do it again. Yes.
I don't know if anybody can answer this question. I'm teaching a mechanical engineering class this semester, and one of the things the students are supposed to learn how to do is to design experiments. And I've been at a loss for figuring out what kind of artifact or what they can produce that will show me their understanding of the design process. This is from, I can see, they can design something and I can see what they did, but I want to know what steps they were following in terms of coming up with the final product, sort of looking at their process skill development. The cartoon thing sounded like something where they could, I might be able to get them to sort of draw a cartoon of some people designing experiments. And I didn't know how I would be able to, if you've used anything like that for process skill development or anything else.
Since Andrea was in that group that did that wonderful job.
I was in the group that did the tune do.
Okay, well then then I can talk with her after the seminar then.
And the interesting part is that everyone in that group was in science, and so I think it was funny how people kind of with that science background just gravitated toward, oh my gosh, this is how I can use this tool.
Toward cartoons.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good point that it can show, you can do step by step by step, and it would show some type of process or thinking pattern on this is what I did first, this is what I did second, kind of thing. That would make sense for a lot of things that we do.
You could use a graphic organizer for that purpose too, particularly Smart Draw, which unfortunately has a hefty fee. They have a lot of templates.
Concept map stuff?
Yeah, something like that. Anything that would show a timeline sort of format would work. Google Docs has a lot of templates online for flow charts. I mean, essentially it would be more of a flow chart type of structure, I would think.
Good question. Anybody else?
What are your all's favorite tools? What could you not live without as you're developing course materials and other just personal organization and that sort of thing?
I live on Delicious personally.
Delicious,
especially
yes.
for class stuff, finding videos and URLs all the time. And I'm like, oh, that would be perfect for this course.
Mm-hmm.
No, that would be perfect for when we talk about this topic. And I tag and bookmark, tag and bookmark, tag and bookmark, and I've become overly reliant on it now.
See, that's what I need to do because I'm lost. I mean, my hard drive is.
Well, all those sheets of papers that said add to this other list, you're doing it right there live. That's even quicker than the wiki.
Except I can't ever figure out how to do the it's DE period,
Website.
or is it DEL?
You can just put
They've actually
delicious.com.
changed it. Yeah, it's just
Just put
delicious.com.
delicious.com.
Yeah, it used to be del.icio.us, but they bought the real one, and it's much easier to
It's
find.
on our
Is
bookmarking
it? Oh,
list.
that's true. It is.
First
It
one.
is. I know.
But yeah, delicious.com. It's just a way to go in and bookmark and have your things all in one place, which is a good thing, especially for teachers to have all your stuff in one place,
There it is.
if that ever happens. But I would like to thank everybody for coming today. I'd also like to thank the panel. That's great. And this was the first time that we've done this kind of panel system, so I know we jumped back and forth a little bit, but I hope you still got some questions answered and you learned a lot. If you're watching online, please fill out that evaluation and send it to us. If you're watching here, fill out the one in front of you and hand it to us before you leave. And thank you again, and we'll see you at the next event.